You're listening to Let's Talk AI.
So welcome to Let's Talk AI. Today's guest is Will Zhao. Will is from the University of Waterloo, Stratford School of Interaction, Design, and Business. So welcome, Will.
Thank you so much, Harold. Hello, everyone.
So we're going to jump right in, and I'm going to ask you a bit of background questions so we can get a framework of how did you end up, getting to Waterloo. Maybe if you could tell us a little bit of the history there and background story of, master's, PhD, original undergrad, how did this all happen?
Absolutely. So I'm a interdisciplinary researcher. That's actually a very broad term. You could have 1,000 different types of interdisciplinary researchers. So the interdisciplinarity for me would be business and social science and humanities. I actually had a undergrad in humanities and went on to do my master's and PhD in business and management. And during this time, I got very much interested in studying technology and innovation management, and I went on to actually become a faculty member at the business school, where I focused most of my research time studying and understanding new technologies such as AI. In fact, in between times, I also had a diploma from Cambridge University on AI and ethics. So really interdisciplinary. A lot of people talk about interdisciplinary, but I guess I would be considered one of the true interdisciplinary researchers because I do look at different disciplines. So what got me into this school is also because of its true interdisciplinary nature. So at Stratford School of Interaction Design and Business, we have three keywords: creativity, technology, and business. So essentially, we have professors coming from a variety of backgrounds: HCI, business design, user experience, and so you see a lot of us are also very interdisciplinary. So it's no surprise that I end up being at this school, and that's how I got here. It's a long way, but I think it's a natural progression as well.
Okay, you touched on a really relevant topic these days with AI and ethics. Tell us a bit about that diploma or degree you did at Cambridge.
Yes. So this is actually a really hot topic now. I think a lot of people are now fascinated about AI in terms of what it can do, and but there's a smaller group of people who are interested in looking at what AI shouldn't do or what we shouldn't be using AI to do. So when I did my research at Cambridge, what I looked at is actually twofold. When we talk about AI ethics, what do we truly mean? So I was interested in inventorizing the existing knowledge of AI ethics. I try to understand what people are talking about when we talk about AI ethics. The second thing I was interested in looking at is ethical AI really possible? Because absolutely we hear about ethical AI day in, day out. It seems to be something that can be done fairly easily. But after my research, I realized that the AI ethics is something that we need to keep on talking and keep on really looking at, paying a lot of attention to, and giving a lot of resources for. But also, ethical AI may be harder to achieve than we actually than we would like to believe.
Interesting. So you talked about using AI in your day-to-day. What does that look like for you?
Yes. So I'm a researcher. So using AI in my day-to-day would be actually two things. AI as my research subject. So I look at AI from organizational perspectives, how organizations use AI. As an interdisciplinary researcher, as I mentioned, I also look at AI from educational perspectives. So basically, as a research subject, AI is interesting to me because it has the educational potential that helps students to better study, helps them to deal with certain social certain social issues related to studying. But the third area where I deal with AI as my research subject is engineering. So I look at better ways or new ways to achieve high, better algorithm design. So that's one part, only one part of how I deal with AI. So as my research subject. But the second part in my day-to-day, AI is a tool, just like anyone else. Now we are exploring. I am also exploring what AI can do, can help me. I guess the hot topic at the moment is generative AI. Everyone is familiar, I think, by now. Everyone is familiar with at least one example of that, which is ChatGPT. That's the text-based generative AI. A lot of my colleagues in design, now they're amazed at the visual example of generative AI. So the apps that can generate really stunning visuals just based on a few verbal prompts. So yeah, so the second part of dealing with AI in my day-to-day would be using this and exploring how these tools can really help me better do my job as a researcher, as a consultant for businesses and organizations, and also, most importantly, as a teacher to better serve my students.
So can you give us any under the hood examples of using Chat GPT with the more visual side?
ChatGPT with visual. Okay, so ChatGPT would be more, I would say, would be more on the verbal side. So it's basically a text-based generative AI technology. But I do read about how you could use ChatGPT to come up with film or movie script, right? And of course, this we're looking at not only you give ChatGPT some prompts, and then ChatGPT generates the entire scripts. I think professionally, we're looking at more and more examples where people are using AI as their co-pilot. So they initiate this prompt, and then ChatGPT generates some good or potentially good um, script material, and then the professionals revise it, and as a new prompt, then ChatGPT generates another response. So this is kind of a fine-tuned process. I do read about how ChatGPT has been used as a tool for movie directors or script writers to generate good scripts within a short period of time, and then that kind of script would be fed into visual based generative AI technology, and helps those practitioners to generate videos. So again,
Right.
one example is two types of generative AI technologies.
So that's in these visual examples, something like a DALL-E, I guess it's called, and the new one, standard diffusion.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's amazing how this kind of technology have evolved. I think there's at this time there is a tremendous amount of business attention paid to this kind of technology. You would think about all these companies have been working on it in the background last year or even the decade before, but because late last year ChatGPT was launched and it was immediately a, a a hit. So you could imagine that a lot of other companies that they could no longer wait anymore. Right? They wanted to roll out their products. So now now we're only in April, but over the last 4 months, we've seen just hundreds of new applications being rolled out by companies. And in fact, if you look at the startup scene, I would say even right now, this hour, there would be at least in Canada, at least dozens or scores of new AI companies, AI startups being registered, trying to tap into generative AI technologies. So there's definitely a craze, you could say. I'm not sure whether it's going to be a fad that fades away very quickly, but it's definitely there is some craze there.
You never know. Maybe the new host for Let's Talk AI will be Chat GPT.
Absolutely, yeah.
So back to the title of your school, Interaction Design and Business. How are these generative AI affecting business? Like really,
Yes.
rubber hits the road.
big time. We actually had quite a few discussions about this, me and my colleagues at the school, and also the organizations that I deal with, that I consult for over the last few months. So generative AI basically going to challenge any line of business where the production or the output of text and visuals and also other multimodal combinations would be considered the core of that business. Think about marketing. Think about advertisement agency. Now, you do not have to have a fleet of very expensive computers and specialized equipment. You do not have to have a gigantic team of specialists, 2 or 3 people. It's a startup equipped with the right knowledge and the right types of generative AI technologies, and many of which are offered online at a very, very competitive price, could arguably get a very big, I would say, a sizable share of the advertising market. So you could say, in a way, it is a tool that levels the playing ground for content-based lines of business. But of course, this is just at the very beginning, where I'm actually very curious to see how things will evolve in terms of, competition. Again, it seems that it's leveling the playing ground. A lot of people can get in. You do not need to be that specialized or that resourceful to get in, but you also hear the phrase "fools rush in." So I'm actually very curious to see how this would play out in the next debate, even in the next 6 months.
There's a lot of talk around fake news and trustworthiness. If you could just give us your thoughts or insights onto that, what you're seeing.
Oh, yes. So this is a huge topic, a very important one, Harold. I would say with generative AI, fake news or misinformation and disinformation would become even more salient. I think we would see more and more very convincing fake news in the future. Now, take ChatGPT as an example. For folks who are listening, if you are not coming from a technical background, you're thinking ChatGPT generated answers are very human-like, very easy to believe. That is because it was trained on some of the best quality data, and the way it gives out answer is in a very authoritative manner. So if we do not pay a lot of attention to the actual content and the underlying logic of the content that we are given, but just look at how the text is structured and the flow of the text, then generative AI now can do a fantastic job. It's almost it's almost very hard to distinguish what is generated by AI, what is not. So for people who are not that attentive to the underlying logic of any piece of information, or not that well trained to understand AI structure or grammatical structure of common generative AI, it would be very hard for them to tell whether a piece of information is from a human being, which, by the way, can also be fake news, right? Or from AI generated at a much lower cost and a much bigger volume. So it would be a serious challenge to the society, I would say. It's not just doubling the risks. I think it's 100%. So it's 100-fold more risk. It's a very, very hard topic to tackle at this moment.
So how do we cope? How do we?
I honestly don't know. I would only hope that we would have not only our hopes on new technologies that counter, so from technical aspect, that counter this potential plague of generative AI powered misinformation, but also the society, we would have a bigger awareness of the consequences, and also I would hope that universities and organizations would want to spend more time and energy and resources on rolling out some educational programs that bring up the general public's awareness of what the consequence would be, and also maybe some training programs on helping the students and other members of general public to understand what kind of text is more likely to be generated by AI. Now, speaking of that, so now at the university setting, I think Howard, you and I were very familiar with this new issue. A lot of our students are using generative AI to produce they're tempted, of course. We cannot really just say that, well, there's something fundamentally wrong with it, but people are naturally curious and they're tempted to generate reports, written output, and also even visual output. So this is a new issue that we're faced with. Now, I guess one thing that I've been doing and got a lot of interest from my students is to tell them, actually, even if you can use new software, you can use new websites or new plugins that are specifically set up to detect AI, but there are some underlying logics or underlying features of a text that is generated by AI with a pair of human eyes that I have. I can actually a lot of times just tell after reading something for a couple of seconds whether it is more likely to be written by human beings or by AI. So I've been sharing some of these techniques with my students, and they were amazed. Well, that is because I have a interdisciplinary background. I also study AI from a technical background. So there are certain things that I think can be taught, can be trained. So some of these programs might be interesting for students. Of course, I would expect two kinds of students would be interested. Type number one would be the student who are interested in learning stuff from high quality texts, right? So they want to know whether something is generated by AI, and before they make a decision whether they want to invest in it. I'm not saying at all that AI generated texts are not good, right? But the second type would be students who want to know how a text could be more likely generated or regarded as AI generated, so they will learn the tricks and do some changes to the assignment that they hand in, so that it will not be. So again, we are now, I think, in this game of cat and mouse, right? Let's just see which technology or which kind of skill sets gets taught first. Anyways, that's another new thing that I'm curious to.
You made a comment you can look at the text with a human eye and see the difference.
Yes. But I cannot say I'm always right. I cannot say I'm always right.
But as this is evolving, that ability is probably going to close real soon, and
Yes.
it learns more from people, like you said, giving more feedback.
Yeah.
We know of web crawlers where they go looking for things. If you combined, does these generative tools have to learn from a human, or could they just go crawl themselves and learn from any online documents at their own rate?
Yes, they can do both. From a business standpoint, I don't think it's very nice for any company. But again, it's just speaking as, it's a huge generalization here, but I don't think there's any interest for any companies to want to train their algorithms or feed their algorithms with garbage data. So hypothetically, any kind of algorithm can be fed with information we got from the internet, but we all know the internet is flooded with information that are not very well written, that are not very well thought out. So from a business standpoint, I think most companies want to feed their algorithms with good quality data, but that actually generates a problem for these companies in terms of trying to have an algorithm in the future that can produce some text that is very human-like. Now, let me explain this. Now, if you are a company that trains algorithm, just like say ChatGPT, and you want to fit ChatGPT with the best possible data, but you also know all these best possible data are defined. So how do we define best? Not only the content, but also the way this information is written, right? So essentially, you are definitely giving your algorithm, feeding your algorithm with the best written data with the best possible content. So unless you deliberately vary the level or the quality of the text, otherwise, I think that whoever interacts with your algorithm, they will get text generated by your algorithm that is so well written at a very consistent level. Now, human beings don't do that. I might write one very good sentence this morning, and this afternoon in the same passage, I would continue to write 2 or 3 good ones, but most of the paragraph probably would be, filled with mediocre sentences. I might end that paragraph with a lousy sentence. I do not have that level of consistency that AI has. So you see, one thing that we can use to look at whether something is written by AI just in the future, right, is as long as businesses still continue to fit their algorithm with the best possible data, and they still want to sell their product for its ability to generate good quality data, then we can always tell with some confidence whether certain piece of information is AI generated, because that level of consistency is just beyond human beings. We could have the best writers sitting with us right now, and you cannot ask that writers to generate some text with very high quality throughout, unless you give that person a long time and you hire some other people to do peer review. So you need time, you need extra eyes to achieve that level of consistency. But with AI, that level is guaranteed. But also the amount of text that it can generate within a short period of time is also unimaginable. So next time, I guess when you see a large amount of text in front of you at a very high quality, but also with a tremendous consistency, now you ask yourself whether it is done by a group of experts over a long period of time, or it is AI generated. So it's just one of those things. Yes.
Let me come back to a real simple thing, which has been the foundation for a lot of our creativity, because it's, one of your 3 pillars there is when you make an artwork or you write a poem or whatever, you do some little, if you put a prompt into ChatGPT and said, write me a poem on, you bring some topics, some keywords, and it writes it. Who owns that? Who has is it copyrightable because ChatGPT wrote it? Do they own it? You know what I mean? Own it in the sense of who yeah. And same if you take even your own artwork and scanned it and got it to merge it with something else. I'm not taking images off the internet, even if I gave it or, whatever. Who owns this new hybrid byproduct?
That is really a very, very important question, Howard. I know you have your personal take on that as well. I can't really speak about ChatGPT because I think there are a lot of thought put into it from this company's perspective. So any listeners interested in this topic would only need to just read their latest fine prints, which I think, by the time, it depends on when you listen to this episode, which I think might change. But in general, at the general level, it depends on company policy and company's willingness. For instance, those visual-based generative AI technologies that we just talked about, a lot of those companies, they say, well, you generate this visual using our website, and feel free to use it for commercial purposes. We do not claim ownership to it. So basically, this company policy, they say, well, you can use it however you want. If you credit us, thank you. If you don't, it's okay. Some companies have that kind of approach. Other companies, they have a similar approach, but more nuanced. Let me explain. So basically, it would depend on how much you pay those companies. Now, for free users, so you do not, they do not say, well, you can use it. Well, I don't think it would be very it would be very legal, I mean, for them to prohibit, to prohibit any kind of uses. But then most companies, they don't encourage you to free users, I mean, to use their generated visuals for commercial purposes. But if you pay more, then they would say, well, now you can go ahead and use it again. So you see, the second scenario might sound a little bit different from the first one, but still, we're talking about the same things. So basically, the company policy decides who owns the copyright. But I guess your question is actually more profound than that. That is, does company really have the right to decide? Because after all, it is not the company that generates the visual art or the text, for that matter. The visual art or the text generated by any kind of website, that whether we pay or not, or we do not pay, they are products of an algorithm trained by millions, if not hundreds of millions of inputs that are acquired largely in the free of charge manner. So to say the company would have 100% decision-making power over the copyright, I think is to say it is okay to just acquire all those hundreds of millions of visual and textual inputs that the company could get, which may not have paid for, and then the company can make a profit out of it. So that's a second level of that complexity there. It's very, very hard to say. But if you ask me, I would think that we always want to have a better legal infrastructure built up, a better ethical infrastructure built up. But then also the public awareness of fair use is very important. As a university, I think that's one of the things we need to promote. In addition to generative AI skill set that we want to train our students with, and also the discernful eye that we want our students to have. But I think also the general fair use awareness that we should instill in our students. So,
wasn't it ironic? We circled all the way around and get back to the ethics where we started.
Yes.
Well, I'm going to thank you very much for your chat today. This has been great to have you on Let's Talk AI, and wish you all the best in your research and continued generative AI explorations.
Thank you so much, Harold, for having me, and thank you for listeners for your time. Yeah.
Awesome. Take care.
Take care.